It was a Saturday afternoon when I announced my engagement to Mark. I had been looking forward to this moment for so long, to finally share the news with my family. I had always dreamed of their approval, but deep down, I knew it would never come easy. I didn't expect confetti or fireworks, but maybe just a moment of genuine joy, something that didn't feel like a performance. Mark and I had been together for 5 years. 5 years. It felt like a lifetime, but in a way, it also felt like I was still trying to prove that we were serious, that this wasn't just some fleeting relationship. I wanted to tell my parents and Liam, my younger brother, that I had found someone I wanted to spend forever with, but I wasn't sure if they would care. The dinner that evening was supposed to be a celebration. My parents had invited me over, and I knew Liam would be there, too. Mark and I had spent the last few weeks planning our engagement announcement, choosing the right moment, making sure everything was perfect. I couldn't help but feel a little nervous, especially when it came to Liam. Liam was always the golden child in our family, the one with the perfect grades, the career that everyone envied, the life that seemed effortless. And there I was, the one who could never quite get it right. No matter how hard I tried, I was always overshadowed by him. Our parents, especially, always seemed to see him as the prize. They didn't mean to, but it was obvious in everything they said and did. I had learned to live with it, but it didn't make it hurt any less. When we sat down at the dinner table, Mark gave me a reassuring smile. I could feel my heart racing. I was going to do it. I was going to tell them that we were engaged. So, there's something I wanted to share with you all, I said, my voice wavering just slightly. Mark and I are getting married. There was a moment of stunned silence. My parents looked at each other, then at me. I could see the excitement in their eyes, but also a trace of hesitation. They weren't used to seeing me this happy, not in the way I had imagined. "Oh, Emma," my mom finally said, her voice soft. "That's wonderful. We're so happy for you, sweetie." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Mark smiled too, and I was grateful for that. But there was a small nagging voice in the back of my head telling me it wasn't enough. My dad muttered something about being happy for us as well, but there was something about the way he said it, almost like he was distracted. His gaze shifted to Liam, who was sitting at the other end of the table, a slight smirk on his face. I felt it immediately, the cold, unspoken competition between Liam and me. He had always been the one to steal the spotlight, to make everything about him. I had never been good enough in their eyes. Sure, they were happy for me, but I could sense it. There was something about this moment that didn't sit right with me. Then, as if to confirm my suspicions, Liam leaned back in his chair, his grin widening just slightly. "Well, congrats, Emma. Mark's a lucky guy, I suppose." I had to fight to keep my face neutral. That smile, predatory, almost, wasn't something I could ignore. But I was too excited about my engagement to let his comment ruin it. I was about to start planning my wedding, a dream I had been holding on to for so long, and nothing, was going to take that away from me. Mark noticed the way Liam's eyes lingered on me, but he didn't say anything. He was too polite to call out my brother, just like I was. But inside, I could feel it. That smile was a warning, one I didn't want to pay attention to, but I couldn't help it. I turned back to my family and smiled, trying to ignore the tension. But it was there, sitting between us at the table, as always. And as much as I wanted to believe that everything would be okay, deep down, I knew better. This engagement, my happiness, it wasn't going to be enough for them. It wasn't going to make me enough. I thought that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. But I didn't think I could be that lucky. The wedding planning was going smoothly, or at least, it appeared that way on the surface. Mark and I were both excited, but as the weeks wore on, something started to feel off. It was subtle at first, little things that I convinced myself were just the stress of the wedding or his workload. Mark's job had been demanding, and with the wedding getting closer, I figured his increasing absences were just part of the deal. He started coming home later and later, often barely making it in time for dinner. He'd say he was tied up with work or a client meeting, but something about the way he said it started to sound rehearsed. I told myself it was nothing to worry about. We were in the middle of planning one of the biggest events of our lives, and he had a lot on his plate. I told myself I was just being paranoid. It wasn't just the late nights. His phone became an obsession. I'd catch him checking it repeatedly, his face serious, his thumb moving over the screen like he was having a conversation he didn't want me to know about. I asked him a few times who he was texting, and he'd smile sheepishly and brush it off, saying it was just work. Nothing to worry about, Em. Still, the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. I couldn't explain it, but I felt like I was losing him, bit by bit. He seemed emotionally distant, like he wasn't really here anymore. And that scared me. I told myself it was just pre-wedding jitters, that the stress was getting to both of us. I kept thinking once the wedding was over, everything would settle back into place. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. One evening, while I was scrolling through wedding ideas on my laptop, Liam came over to visit. It was the first time in a while that he and I had a chance to talk one-on-one without the weight of family drama looming over us. I was grateful for the brief escape, hoping for some normal conversation. Instead, he launched into something unexpected. "So, how's Mark?" he asked casually, leaning back in the chair. It was a simple question, but there was something about his tone that made me pause. Liam wasn't usually this interested in my relationship with Mark. If anything, he was more likely to make sarcastic comments about how perfect my life looked. But this time, it was different. "He's good," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Busy with work, as usual." I smiled, hoping to make the conversation feel normal. Liam raised an eyebrow. "Busy with work?" He leaned in, his gaze focused on me in a way that made me uncomfortable. "You think he's just stressed out from wedding stuff?" I didn't like the way he was looking at me. It was almost too focused, like he was fishing for something. But I brushed it off. "Yeah, I guess." "Why?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation casual. "No reason," he replied with that strange smile of his. "Just wondering. You know, you guys have been together a long time. Sometimes things can get a little complicated." His words lingered in the air, and for a moment, I felt my stomach churn. I didn't respond right away, unsure of what to say. Why was Liam asking me about Mark? Why was he probing into my relationship, especially when we weren't close like that? I wanted to ignore it, to chalk it up to his usual passive-aggressive nature, but a part of me couldn't let it go. The way he had asked, the curiosity behind his words, felt wrong. I felt myself pulling away emotionally, but I didn't want to believe it. Not about Liam. Not about Mark. "Anyway, I should get going," Liam said, getting up. "Just wanted to check in." He didn't wait for me to reply before heading out the door. I sat there in the silence, my heart heavy. I didn't know if Liam was just being Liam, always asking too many questions, pushing boundaries where they didn't belong, or if there was something else going on. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't just Mark's behavior. It wasn't just the wedding stress. It was everything. I didn't want to admit it, but the sense of something wrong had settled deep in my gut. As the days passed, Mark continued to act more distant. I tried to talk to him a few times, but every conversation seemed to end in vague promises that things would get better once the wedding was over. And I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the more I ignored the signs, the louder they became. Liam's strange behavior was just the first of many signs, ones I could no longer brush off. The distance between Mark and me grew, and the questions lingered in my mind. Was it really just wedding stress? Or was there something more? Something I didn't want to see? It was a Thursday evening when Sarah sat me down, her eyes swollen, her hands shaking. I'd just gotten home from work, exhausted from another long day of dealing with clients, contracts, and the endless details of wedding planning. I had expected a quiet evening with her, a few minutes to catch up on the plans we'd made for the wedding. But instead, she looked at me with a heaviness I couldn't understand. "Emma," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you." I felt my stomach drop. "What is it?" I asked, trying to mask the growing sense of dread inside me. She paused for a moment, swallowing hard, before speaking again. "I'm pregnant." My heart skipped a beat. "What? You?" I stopped myself before I could say anything else. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the ground beneath me suddenly unstable. I blinked at her, waiting for her to say something that would make sense of the words she had just spoken. But nothing made sense. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking. That's fine. We'll figure it out. You and me, together." I tried to smile, though it felt fake, even to me. Her eyes filled with tears. "But it's not yours, Emma." I froze. My mind went blank, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean? What are you saying?" I asked, my voice rising, panic creeping into my chest. Sarah lowered her head, her hands trembling in her lap. "It's Liam's. The baby, it's Liam's." A cold, sickening realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, trying to process the words that had just escaped her lips. "Liam, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. My brother? Tears spilled from Sarah's eyes, and she shook her head, covering her face with her hands. I never meant for it to happen. I don't know how it did. It just happened. I don't want to hurt you, Emma, but it's the truth. I don't know how to make it right. I was too stunned to say anything for a long time. The room seemed to close in on me, the weight of her words pressing down, suffocating me. My own brother. Liam. The thought of it was unthinkable. How could she? How could he? I had trusted them both with everything, and they had both betrayed me in the worst way possible. How long has this been going on? My voice trembled with anger, disbelief, and a growing sense of betrayal that I couldn't even begin to process. Sarah looked up, her face pale, her eyes filled with regret. A few months. It started when Liam told me that you weren't the one for me, that we could be better together. I don't know why I listened to him. I don't know why I let it happen. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Liam told you that I wasn't the one for you? I could barely speak through the rage and pain that rose up in me. He's been sabotaging my life. All this time. Sarah nodded, wiping her tears away. I should have stopped it. I should have known better. But I was confused. And then it became something I couldn't control. I never meant to hurt you, Emma. I swear. I couldn't look at her anymore. The words were too much. They felt like they were stabbing me in the chest, twisting deeper with each passing second. I stood up suddenly, unable to stay still, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. You slept with my brother, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. You let him manipulate you, and now you're telling me this? After everything we've been through? How could you betray me like this? Sarah reached out, but I pulled away, shaking my head. I need space. I need time to think. She nodded silently, but I could see the guilt and shame in her eyes. She knew she had lost me, but that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that she wasn't the only one who had betrayed me. My own flesh and blood. Liam had taken everything I had trusted and crushed it underfoot. I walked out of the room, my mind reeling, the weight of the betrayal sinking deeper with every step. How could Liam, of all people, be the one to destroy my life like this? How could he do this to me? I didn't know how I was supposed to move forward after this, how I was supposed to forgive either of them. The truth hit me harder than I could have ever expected, and as I stood there in the dark hallway, my heart shattered into a million pieces. I could barely sit still after Sarah's bombshell. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating, pressing down on me with every breath. But even in the chaos of it all, I knew there was one person I had to confront, Liam. I needed to hear it from him. I needed to know what happened, what he'd done, why. No matter how much it hurt, I had to hear him say it. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and called him. It rang for what felt like an eternity before he picked up, his voice sounding annoyingly casual. Hey, Emma. What's up? I couldn't hide the venom in my voice. You and Sarah? How long? I didn't even know if I wanted an answer. I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever lies or excuses would spill out of him. Liam was silent for a moment before he sighed, almost like he was irritated. Look, Emma, it was a mistake, okay? It didn't mean anything. We were both confused, and it just happened. Confused? You slept with my fiancé. How is that just a mistake? My voice was cracking now, the hurt and disbelief seeping through every word. I could feel the tears threatening, but I held them back. I couldn't let him see me like this. He exhaled, his tone shifting to something defensive. You've been distant lately, okay? Sarah's been upset, and I was just there for her. It wasn't supposed to go this far. But honestly, maybe if you had been more present, she wouldn't have looked elsewhere. I froze, his words striking me like a slap. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was blaming me. He was accusing me of driving Sarah to cheat on me. I had trusted him, my own brother, and he was throwing it back in my face. I gripped the phone tighter. You're unbelievable, Liam. You betray me, and now you're blaming me for it? What happened to being my brother? What happened to caring about me? There was a long pause before he spoke again, his voice suddenly more measured, almost cold. I'm sorry, all right. It was a mistake. But maybe it wouldn't have happened if you had been a better partner. You've been so wrapped up in wedding stuff, in your own life. Sarah needed someone who could be there for her. And I was just there. I snapped. You're not sorry, Liam. Not really. You don't care about me, or her. You just wanted to hurt me. My hands were shaking now, my chest tight with rage. You've been playing me this whole time, haven't you? You've been lying to my face, acting like everything's fine while you've been sleeping with my fiancée. I didn't even know what I was saying anymore. The anger, the hurt, everything was spilling out of me, uncontrollable. I ended the call, staring at the screen, unable to process what had just happened. But that wasn't enough. I couldn't just leave it at that. I was going to confront him face to face. I was done hiding from the truth, from this family that had torn me apart for so long. I drove over to Liam's house, my heart pounding in my chest. When I arrived, I didn't even knock. I just opened the door, my mind set on one thing: confronting him. But as I stepped inside, the sight of my parents sitting in his living room made my blood run cold. They looked at me like I was the problem, as if they had already made up their minds about whose side they were on. "What's going on, Emma?" my dad asked, his voice low. "You need to calm down. We've been trying to talk some sense into Liam." I felt my chest tighten. Talk some sense into him? Are you serious right now? I turned to Liam, who was sitting on the couch, his face unreadable. "You've ruined everything. Everything. And now you're going to sit here and let them defend you?" Liam shrugged, almost as if he didn't care. "It's not a big deal, Emma. Get over it." I felt like I had been slapped. How could he be so cold? So indifferent to everything he had destroyed? I turned to my parents, my anger boiling over. "How can you just sit there and defend him? Do you even care about what he's done? Do you care about me at all?" My mom, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Emma, you need to understand. Liam's just trying to make things right. He's sorry. We all make mistakes." "No, Mom, this isn't a mistake. This is a betrayal. And I can't just keep pretending everything is fine. You've always picked him. Always. And now you're siding with him again." My voice cracked as the weight of it all hit me. I'm done with this family. The room went quiet. My dad shifted uncomfortably. My mom looked at me with wide eyes. But Liam? He just stared at me like I was the crazy one. Like I was the one who had messed up. "Emma, calm down. You're overreacting," Liam said, his voice too casual, too dismissive. I snapped. "I'm not overreacting. I'm done. You've crossed a line, Liam, and I'm not going to stand by while you ruin my life. I'm done." My voice was shaking now, my heart pounding in my chest, but I didn't care. I had never said those words before, but I knew they were true. I wasn't going to let this family continue to tear me apart. I walked out of Liam's house, my hands trembling, my heart in pieces. I knew I had just severed every tie I had left with them. I was done, and there was no going back. The days after confronting Liam felt like a blur, a mix of anger, numbness, and overwhelming sadness. I had done what I thought I needed to do, cutting ties with my family, but the reality of it all was heavier than I ever expected. Every part of me was broken. I had lost so much in such a short amount of time, and the weight of it all kept pushing me further into isolation. I tried to return to work, hoping that normality could anchor me, but even that felt impossible. The constant barrage of calls, texts, and emails from my parents, desperately begging me to forgive Liam, to make things right, was relentless. They didn't care that their behavior had pushed me to the edge. They only cared about their own image, about maintaining the status quo. The messages came in waves, from both my parents and extended family, all repeating the same tired lines. "He's your brother, Emma. Please don't do this. And he's sorry, just give him another chance." Each time, my stomach churned. I had already made my decision, but they refused to respect it. They thought I was overreacting. They thought this was a phase, that I would come to my senses and forgive them all. I couldn't escape them. Even when I changed my phone number, they somehow managed to get in touch. I had blocked them on social media, but my mother would still leave me long voicemails, crying, telling me how disappointed she was in me. She would say things like, "We raised you better than this, Emma," as though the blame was mine to carry. At home, I found it impossible to focus. My apartment felt empty, despite being filled with things that used to bring me comfort. I would sit for hours, staring at the walls, scrolling through my phone, feeling like I was trapped in a prison of my own making. The worst part was the guilt, the overwhelming, suffocating guilt. I kept wondering if I had been too harsh, if I had made a mistake. But then, I would remember the look on Liam's face, the indifference in his eyes, and the fact that my parents had chosen his side. And I would realize, no, this was right. I was doing the right thing. But that didn't stop the shame from creeping in. It wasn't just from my family, it was from my colleagues, too. It felt like everyone at work knew what had happened, and though they never spoke directly to me about it, I could feel the whispers behind my back, the sideways glances when I passed by, the way the air would shift when I entered a room. I hated how much it affected me. I hated how I could sense their judgment, how it made me feel like I was the one who had done something wrong. The days turned into weeks, and the pressure only increased. Sarah, too, had become a constant presence in my life, though not in the way I had hoped. She would send me messages, trying to apologize, saying she was sorry for what had happened, but each one felt more like an excuse than a real apology. She kept telling me she was confused and that she didn't know what to do. But all I could hear in those words was someone who was trying to justify the pain she had caused. I tried to talk to her once, hoping for clarity, hoping that I could find some way to forgive her. But every time I did, the same overwhelming feelings of betrayal hit me all over again. She would cry and beg for my forgiveness, and I would listen, but deep down, I knew that nothing she said could undo what had been done. The trust between us was shattered beyond repair. One evening, as I sat on the couch, my phone buzzed again. Another text from my mom. "I don't understand why you're doing this. Liam is family. He's your brother. He made a mistake, and you're just walking away." Her words stung, and yet, all I could feel was numbness. It wasn't just the affair, it wasn't just the betrayal. It was everything that had led up to this. All those years of being overlooked, of being second best, of being ignored, and now this. The emotional weight of it all threatened to crush me. The guilt became a constant companion, following me everywhere I went. Should I have done more? Should I have been more forgiving, more understanding? But then I remembered Liam's words, his indifference, and I knew that I had made the right choice. Still, the isolation was unbearable. I hadn't left my apartment in days. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt like myself. I was drowning in a sea of betrayal and grief, and every time I tried to surface for air, it felt like the weight of my family's expectations was pulling me back under. I was trapped in my own head, trapped in a situation I didn't know how to escape. And yet, there was no going back now. I had to keep moving forward. I couldn't let myself be consumed by the guilt, by their attempts to manipulate me into forgiving them. But it was hard, so hard. Every part of me wanted to give in, to go back to them, to pretend like nothing had happened. But I knew that would only destroy me in the end. I had to stay strong, even if it felt like everything was falling apart around me. And then, when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I got a message from Sarah. This time, it was different. It wasn't a long apology. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness. Instead, she sent me a photo, an ultrasound picture, the baby, the child she and Liam were going to raise together. I stared at the image, unable to process what I was seeing. I felt the anger rise in my chest, a fury so intense I couldn't breathe. They were going to raise this child together. My brother, my fiancé, and I had no place in any of it. It was the final blow, and I knew, without a doubt, that this was it. There was no turning back. I couldn't take it anymore. I tried everything, cutting ties, blocking numbers, avoiding my family, but they kept coming at me, relentless in their pursuit of forgiveness, of forcing me to accept what had happened. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore. It was the way they tried to manipulate me into believing I was in the wrong, that somehow I was the one tearing this family apart. Liam's messages, my parents' constant guilt trips, they all blended together into a storm I couldn't outrun. I was worn down, emotionally exhausted. My therapist had told me to focus on self-care, but how could I take care of myself when they kept dragging me back into their mess? When I couldn't escape their toxic influence, even in my own space. That's when I decided to seek help. I needed something concrete to protect myself, a way to stop them from infringing on my life. I consulted with a lawyer and discussed the possibility of getting a restraining order. It wasn't just for my peace of mind, it was necessary. My boundaries had been violated too many times, and I wasn't about to let them get away with it any longer. I could feel the tension building as my lawyer explained the process. He asked about the harassment, about the messages, the phone calls, the times my parents had shown up at my apartment unannounced, demanding I forgive Liam. I told him about the constant barrage of texts and the way they tried to push me back into their manipulative grip, the emotional distress it had caused, and, of course, the way Liam had crossed every line. He nodded gravely. "We'll file for a restraining order. If they continue to violate your boundaries, we'll have legal grounds to take action." It felt like a weight had been lifted. Finally, There was something tangible, something I could use to protect myself. But little did I know, this was just the beginning of a much deeper, messier battle. 2 days later, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a familiar number, my dad's. I didn't answer it. He'd left me at least 5 voicemails already, each one more pleading than the last. He was trying to guilt me into coming back to the family, telling me that I couldn't keep shutting them out. But when I arrived home that night, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. My parents were standing on the porch, looking like they had every right to be there. I froze, feeling the panic rise in my chest. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, stepping outside. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. "Emma," my dad began, his voice full of fake concern. "We've been trying to reach you. We just want to talk. You can't keep running away from us." "Dad, we've been through this. I'm done. I don't want to talk to you right now." I stepped back, ready to shut the door, but my mom quickly stepped forward, blocking the way. "You can't do this," she said, her tone softer but insistent. "You're breaking our hearts, Emma. You're making a mistake. Liam's our son. He made a mistake, but you're hurting him by not forgiving him." It took everything in me not to scream. "He's the one who betrayed me, Mom. He's the one who ruined everything. And you're standing here, telling me to forgive him?" My voice cracked with frustration. "You've all been doing this for years, pretending like I don't matter, like I'm just here to pick up the pieces when he messes up. Well, I'm done." There was a long silence, but my parents just stood there, staring at me, their faces full of disappointment. I could see the manipulation in their eyes, the way they were trying to guilt me into feeling bad for doing what was right for me. I wanted to cry, but I held it together. This wasn't about them. This was about me finally standing up for myself. "I've already filed for a restraining order," I said, my voice steady. "I don't want to hear from any of you again unless you respect my boundaries. I can't keep doing this." My dad looked shocked, his face going pale. "You filed for a restraining order?" His voice was incredulous. "Emma, this is too far. You don't need to do this." "I do," I replied coldly, stepping back and closing the door. "I'm done." The sound of their voices calling after me, begging me to reconsider, faded as I locked the door. I couldn't believe it had come to this, but I also knew it was the only way to protect myself. The next morning, I received a call from my lawyer. He informed me that Liam might try to counter with a claim of assault after a confrontation at the gym a few weeks ago. I was stunned. Liam was trying to turn everything around on me now, using the situation to paint himself as the victim. It felt like the walls were closing in again, like the pressure from my family was suffocating me. I couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything I had gone through. But as the legal battle began to unfold, I felt my life spiraling further. Each call, each new twist, made it harder to breathe. It felt like every aspect of my life was being dragged through the mud, and I couldn't escape it. My heart was heavy, my mind constantly racing, trying to figure out how to make it all stop. But no matter how much I wanted things to end, I knew it was far from over. The real fight had just begun. I had reached the point where staying in this city, surrounded by all the chaos, was no longer an option. The constant pressure from my family, the unending guilt, and the overwhelming weight of betrayal had worn me down to a point where I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I wasn't just emotionally drained. I was completely broken. So, I made a decision. A decision that was terrifying but necessary. I was leaving. I couldn't keep putting myself through this. The thought of staying, enduring the same toxic environment day after day, made me feel suffocated. A fresh start was the only thing that could give me back even a shred of peace. I had the opportunity to transfer with my job, an offer I'd been hesitating to take, but now it felt like the only way out. I'd be moving across the country, away from everything that had kept me tied to this painful past. And for the first time in a long time, the thought of leaving didn't feel like an escape. It felt like a chance to rebuild, to be someone new, to finally stop being defined by the betrayals of others. But telling my parents was inevitable, and I dreaded it. I could already feel their disapproval in the air, the tension before I even said a word. When I finally sat down with them to break the news, they didn't even try to hide their frustration. "You're really going to leave?" my mom asked, her voice wavering between anger and disbelief. "This is your family, Emma. We need you here." "Mom, I can't stay. I'm suffocating here. I need a break from all of this," I replied, my voice steady, but the sadness in my chest made it hard to breathe. "You're running away from your problems. my dad said, shaking his head, disbelief written all over his face. Leaving won't fix anything. It will fix me, I said, my voice quieter now. I'm broken, and staying here is only going to keep me that way. They didn't understand. They never did. They still saw Liam as the one who needed help, still tried to rationalize his betrayal, still expected me to forgive him like I always did. But this time I couldn't. When I left the room, I felt the weight of their disappointment pressing on my shoulders. But I knew it was the right choice. I had been holding on to them for too long, trying to be everything they wanted me to be, and in the process, I had lost myself. The final blow came in the form of a text message. Sarah had sent it just as I was packing. It was an ultrasound picture of the baby, hers and Liam's. The words under it were simple. We're having a child. I hope one day you'll be okay with this. I stared at the photo, my heart racing, my hands trembling. The weight of the betrayal crashed down on me again. A child that Liam and Sarah were raising together. A child they would build a life around while I stood on the outside, broken and betrayed. I immediately called Sarah. Why are you doing this? My voice was thick with rage, with hurt. How can you think this is okay? You and Liam. What you did, it destroyed everything. And now you expect me to just accept it? Emma, please, Sarah's voice cracked. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. I cut her off. No, you didn't want to hurt me, but you did. And now, you want me to just be okay with it? To accept it? I can't. I can't accept this. I can't forgive you. Not for this. She was silent for a long moment, and then softly, she said, I never meant to lose you, Emma. But I understand if you can't be in my life anymore. And with that, the final thread between us snapped. I didn't want to feel angry. I didn't want to feel like a victim. But I did. I was angry, furious, even, that everything I had built in my life had been torn apart by the very people I trusted the most. And no amount of forgiveness was going to fix it. I hung up the phone and stood in the silence of my room, looking at the packed bags, at the life I was leaving behind. It wasn't just a city. It wasn't just a family. It was everything I had known, everything I had loved, and I was walking away from it all. But I wasn't walking away in defeat. I was walking away to finally find the person I had lost. A person who had been buried under the weight of everyone else's expectations, their guilt, their manipulation. I was walking away to rebuild, to live on my own terms, not theirs. The thought of starting over terrified me, but I had never felt more certain. I was done with this toxic chapter in my life. It was time for something new. It was time for me to heal. I took a deep breath, picked up my bags, and left. I didn't look back. The decision had been made. I had done it. I was leaving everything behind. My family, my hometown, the life I had known. There was nothing left for me here. Nothing but pain, betrayal, and the suffocating weight of the past. So, I boarded that flight to Seattle with a mixture of dread and hope, unsure of what my future would hold, but knowing that it was the only way forward. But of course, my family wasn't done with me yet. The moment I walked into my apartment that evening, I felt the familiar sense of suffocation. My phone had been blowing up with messages from my mom, my dad, Liam, even extended family members. Each message begging for forgiveness, pleading for me to come back, to stop running away. They couldn't understand why I was leaving. They didn't care to. All they wanted was for me to be the daughter they could manipulate, the sister who would forgive and forget, the person they could control. I had blocked all their numbers, all their social media accounts. I had already filed the restraining order. But none of that mattered. My family wasn't going to let me go that easily. I was packing the last of my things when I heard the knock. The familiar sound of my father's knock, sharp and insistent. My heart sank. I didn't need to open the door to know who it was. I ignored it, pretending not to hear, hoping they would give up. But when the knock came again, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I opened the door, steeling myself for the confrontation I had been dreading. There they were, my parents, and Liam, standing together in the hallway, looking like they had just walked in from another world. Their faces were full of hurt and anger, all directed at me. Emma, my mom began, her voice tinged with desperation. We can't let you do this. You're our daughter, your family. Liam, standing slightly behind them, crossed his arms, his face unreadable. I looked past him to my parents. They didn't even look like the people I had once loved. They looked like strangers, people I didn't recognize anymore. I don't want you here. I said, my voice cold. I don't want to talk to any of you. Not now, not ever. My mom's face twisted in pain, but Liam was the one who spoke. You're just running away, Emma. You've always been dramatic about everything. This is just another one of your tantrums. I could feel my blood boil. I had spent so many years letting him walk all over me, but I wasn't going to let him get away with it anymore. You have no idea what you've done, Liam, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You ruined everything. You destroyed me and my relationship. You manipulated Sarah, and now you expect me to just forgive you because you're family? No, I'm done. Liam sneered. Oh, come on. You think I'm the problem? You were always so obsessed with being perfect. Maybe if you had been a better partner, Sarah wouldn't have needed someone else. I didn't even register the words. My mind was too clouded with anger and disbelief. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My parents were silent behind him, their eyes wide, like they didn't know how to react. Or maybe they didn't care. I've spent my entire life being the person you needed me to be, I said, my voice growing louder. And look where it got me. Betrayed by you. By all of you. I'm done being the person you control. I'm leaving, and there's nothing you can do to change that. My dad, who had been quiet up until then, spoke. Emma, please, he said, his voice softer, almost pleading. This is your family. Don't do this. We can work this out. I shook my head. No, you never worked anything out. You just let it all happen. You let Liam tear my life apart, and you did nothing. You never stood up for me. You never cared. And now you want me to come back, like nothing happened? Like everything is okay? I took a deep breath. I'm done. I'm leaving, and this time, I'm not coming back. They stood there, stunned, as if they had never really seen me before. But I didn't care. I couldn't care anymore. I turned and walked back into my apartment, the door swinging closed behind me. I didn't look back. The next morning, I boarded that flight. I didn't even say goodbye to anyone. No more phone calls. No more messages. No more guilt. No more manipulation. As the plane took off, I looked out the window, watching my old life fade away. The city, my family, everything I had known, it was all behind me now. I had no idea what the future would bring, but for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. In Seattle, I started over. It was terrifying. It was difficult, but I knew one thing for sure. I was free. And no matter what came next, I was going to face it on my own terms. Finally,